meeting. 12:30 to 3:30. We're so excited to have you here. Again, this beginning part, we're just going to go through some quick announcements, making sure everyone is aware of what's going on. And then at 1 o'clock, we will promptly turn the time over to Shireen and her colleagues to really guide us through academic success and how our school leaders help guide that at our schools and our campuses. So for today, as far as our opening business, Jennifer Lambert had me put together some thoughts to share with you. She's actually out at a conference, so I'm going to put on my Jennifer hat and share some thoughts from her. Then we also have invited Joylyn Lincoln from UAPCS. She's the director of training there to provide some updates on things that are going on with the association. And then of course, Marie Stephenson, I'm the authorizing and school support specialist who will also walk you through our beginning introduction. So from Jennifer, she wanted first and foremost you to meet our new executive assistant. Excuse me, if you've been following along for a little while, you'll know that James Madsen and Sweet Ion, his dog, they left us a few months ago and went on to chase some dreams and some really exciting things. And so our staff has been looking for a while and trying to find the right replacement for James. And we have found her. And so our new executive assistant is Joanne Castillo. And I believe Joanne was going to be joining us on the call. Let me see if she, let's see, Joanne, are you on our call yet? Okay, I'm not seeing her. So we'll wait a minute for her to get in and then we'll have her go ahead and introduce herself. So we will come back to that. Also, we wanted to make you aware of the Scsp Spotlight this month. We are going to be spotlighting North Star Academy. So if you've read your October newsletter, you'll know that there's an article in there about North Star, and it's highlighting their excellent transfer rate. If you haven't read it yet, go check out the October newsletter, or you can also tune in on Thursday for the State Charter School Board meeting, where we will be spotlighting them in person. I did notice that Joanne hopped on. So Joanne, I'm going to put you on the spot. We'll go back a slide here. So Joanne is our new executive assistant. Do you want to say hello and introduce yourself a little bit here to all of our great charter directors?
Yes, that'd be great. Hi, my name is Joanne Castillo. I am the new executive assistant here at the State Charter School Board. I'm very much looking forward to developing working relationships with each and every one of you. Basic credentials: I recently graduated from the University of Utah with a degree in writing and rhetoric studies. So communication is kind of my thing.
If you come to the game, sorry, I have voices in my head.
It's okay. But if there's anything else you'd like to know about me, please let me know. I'm pretty open with most of that stuff. So yeah. Is there anything else you'd like me to share, Marie?
Did you want to put a little teaser out there for employee of the month that we're going to be starting?
Oh, that's right. Okay, so from what I understand, you have been accustomed to having an employee of the month, and while James was out, that was put on hiatus. However, within the next month or so, I do plan on moving that back up. So if you could go ahead and start nominating some of your amazing employees, that would be fantastic. I'm very much looking forward to getting to know you and each of your teams through this. And yeah, there's something to be said about schools nominating their employees for recognition, because sometimes they are the unsung heroes of this entire thing. So yeah, I'm excited to be able to do that again.
Joanne, with that, is there a link that they can use to nominate? Is it the same as the old link? How would you like them to do that? Do you want them to email you directly?
Yes, actually, if you could email them directly to me right now. I'm still figuring out the website. Again, I've only been here for about 3 weeks, so I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to get things done that way. But if you can go ahead and email me, Joanne, Joanne Castillo, Castillo, at schools.utah.gov. And I'm very much looking forward to receiving your nominations.
Perfect. Joanne, do you also want to just drop that in chat?
Oh, sure.
Just to
I
make
can go
it
ahead and do that.
super simple. Also, when I send out the email with our recording and things, I'll make sure to include Joanne's email there as well. So thank you so much. We are so excited to have you on the team and to get to work with you.
Likewise.
Perfect. So bouncing back now, as I mentioned, our spotlight this month is North Star Academy, and it's for their excellent transfer rate. In case that is a topic of interest to you, I pulled from the presentation that will be done on Thursday, just a quick little section from the school. They were asked, to what do you attribute your success? And they shared that they really value their stakeholder buy-in. They do annual surveys, and they also have focus groups. And there's some unique things that they did with their focus groups. And so that would be a really fun one to listen to if you are curious about that retention and transfer rate. And they really keep their focus on everything being about their students. So great job to them. Good job, North Star. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Joylyn Lincoln from UAPCS, and she's got a few minutes to share about upcoming great things. And then we'll go to your favorite section, the in case you missed it. That's the quick recap of everything going on with us and with USBE. So we'll turn it to Joylyn next.
So I'm just excited to be with you today. I have a couple trainings that we have upcoming for directors that I really want to highlight. The first is our fall convening. This is something that we used to call the fall retreat, but I really like the word convening because I want it to be a time where we get charter school leaders together and we can have dialogues. So this will be on October 20th. We will have two presenters that day. We're going to have Tyler Bastian come talk about creating a trauma-sensitive school community. And that's really critical. As I'm going in and popping into a lot of schools, I'm hearing that the trauma is kind of high right now, that as we're coming out of COVID, students that don't typically experience trauma are coming with trauma. Our teachers are feeling a little bit of trauma. And then how to deal with that as a community, how to make sure everybody's in a safe spot where learning can occur. And then our second presenter that day is going to be Anthony Sedgwicks from Wallace Stegner, and he's going to talk about a radical idea, developing teachers on a daily basis. How do we really grow teachers to really meet our mission and vision of our school and to fit within our school methodology? How do we create the best teacher for our mission, our vision, and allowing our students to succeed, really seeing that academic performance. Traditionally, charter schools, whatever grade they open at academically, they kind of flatline. And we're going to use this as to train our teachers to actually change that so that we have an upward momentum. That academics becomes a priority in our results. And so the community as a whole can see that charter schools are doing phenomenal things as far as education goes. So really super excited about that. And then we're going to bring in a really great lunch and do some breakout groupings and just really delve into issues that are important to you at your schools and ways we can help, especially related to COVID, related to trauma, raising that academic success. Those are really key in the charter school community right now. So that is going to be on October 20th. It'll go from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's at the Fairfield Inn in Midville, and we'll send out that flyer to everybody this afternoon. So you should see that coming out to you from a variety of sources. Hopefully by the end of the day, it's in your mailbox 3 different ways. I'll send it to Marie, she'll send it out, and I'll send it to Gina at the association, she'll send it out, and I will send it out. So that will be 3 different ways. So you really should get that flyer. And then the second thing I really wanted to host was our administrative trainings, and our next one will be on November 2nd, and it is on effective teacher evaluations. And I have had the great privilege of working with the Apple program for charters over the last year, and I've spent a lot of time reading charter school directors' evaluations of teachers, and there are some amazing things going on out there. I love reading and seeing what's happening in classrooms. It makes me kind of homesick and makes me want to go back and get in the classroom and to start teaching again. But at this training, we're going to really fine tune those director evaluations, making sure that there is some focus on the educator standards that are in state board rule, although charter schools are not required to develop and utilize the state tool, we get to kind of develop our own, which is phenomenal. So really having this training about what an effective teacher evaluation looks like, and then how we can implement that into our mission and vision. Always wanting to remember that charter schools have a very specific charter, and we want that to fit into your evaluations. We want it to be a tool that's useful for you. So that will be on November 2nd. And that will be from 11 to 1 over lunchtime, with a phenomenal lunch being brought to you. In October, we did Zupas, we did soup and salad, but kind of the way it works is usually the first one to the training gets to choose where I'm going to pick up lunch. So if that's an incentive to make sure you're there on time, and that will be coming out to you as well on the location. But super excited. And then just because it's that time of year where we're updating Cactus and making sure all of our teachers have their correct licensure, if you're needing help with your Apple program, that is something that our association is willing to help anybody with, any charter school, because we want to take that paper burden off of you so you can do what you really do well, which is focus in on educating students. So if you've got some licensing issues that you don't know the answer to, I can't promise to be a genius in educator licensing, but I am getting really fluent in educator licensing and can help you navigate that process. So if you have questions on educator licensing, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll help you with that over the next couple of weeks. And that's all I've got, unless anybody has any questions.
Draylene, there was a question that popped up in chat. They were wondering if the details of the training dates and times can be pasted into the chat here. I know that I have some of them listed a little bit later in the slides, but even just putting them directly in the chat, if you've got that, Draylene, that would be awesome.
I will do.
Perfect. I was also going to ask you, do we want to plug what is exciting about directors meeting in November?
Oh, directors meeting in November is in
I'll do mine. Well,
person. I'm super excited about that. So we're going back to how we used to do it, which I am way excited because I miss seeing you guys.
Just for the 1 month. Just for the 1 month.
I know, but at least it's 1 month. So it will be at the Utah State Board of Education building. The association will have their member meeting prior to, and then we will bring in lunch. Again, every good meeting has food involved with it. And you can tell because I have a couple extra pounds I should probably misplace. But I'm not planning on that anytime soon.
Do you know how
Anyway,
to get to
so
where
we'll
you
provide
are
lunch
with
for
that?
you between the Utah Association's member meeting and the state directors meeting. So make sure that you are planning on coming. It's going to be a yummy lunch provided by our sponsors, and we look forward to seeing you.
Perfect. Yes, we are so excited. November will be in person. We will also be streaming it. So if you're not able to join us, you can still hop on online. But if you're able to come in person, we wanted to give you lots of time to get that coordinated. That'll be the second Monday, which is November 8th. 12:30 is when directors meeting starts. I think that the association member meeting starts at 11. And that's all there in Basement West. And we are just excited to be back together in person. We're going to do a lot of collaboration that day to really honor the time that you're spending coming together. And we also have a special guest presenter that day, which is our Vice Chair Bowles, Brian Bowles, who is the Vice Chair on the State Charter School Board. He's also been a former superintendent of Davis School District. He teaches at BYU right now, and he's coming to talk also about effective educator evaluations. So lots of talk around evaluations and how to make that effective for you. And so we really hope you can join us in person. If not online, that's great too, for our November 8th training. Anything else with Joylyn? I think, thank you, Joylyn, for posting those things in the chat. I'll keep moving along then. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Joylyn and we'll get you pointed to the right place. Okay, so our last quick announcement section that we have before we jump into our training with EBP today is our In Case You Missed It. So for October, in case you missed it, here's some things you need to be aware of. Our October newsletter came out. If you haven't had a chance to read it yet, the director's message is really great this month. And it again points you to the resolution in support of all students that came out from the State Charter School Board. There's also a section of opportunities for schools if you're looking for some information there. Our Dr. Ed piece is all about masks in schools. So if that's something that is driving you crazy, Dr. Ed addresses that for you. We also, as I mentioned, have our Spotlight on North Star. It has another introduction of Joanne. So a lot of things that you are getting here today, you can also read more about them in the newsletter. And then we have combined the newsletter with the calendar that Jenna puts together for you. So that should have all of the trainings coming out from the association, from USBE, from us, should all be listed in that calendar. So make sure you check out the newsletter. Next up, we had a request to just remind everyone of some transportation guidance. And basically what happened here, it says that the Utah Highway Patrol identified a private school and a public school. So we're talking about two separate schools here. They're not with their usual confusion of what is a charter school, right? So a private and a public, two different schools that were using 11 or more passenger vans for transporting students. And they wanted to remind you that that is against the law per Utah Code 53-8-211.5. And that is linked here when I send out the slides. So if you want to dive into the Utah Code, you certainly can. With this identification that they've had of these two schools, they're assuming that there may be some additional LEAs that might be unaware that they're using illegal vehicles to transport students, and that would be outside of UHP, so the Utah Highway Patrol, or USBE's knowledge. And so the reminder was that all passenger vehicles must have a total capacity of 10 or less, unless of course it's a bus. If you have questions on that, I put Ron's information here, Ron Litchfield. He is the state transportation specialist at USBE, and I put his phone number there. If you'd rather email, it would just be ron.litchfield@schools.utah.gov. We also have Sam Uri over finance that is helping Ron in figuring this out. And Sam will be presenting at our next meeting in November. He'll pop in for a minute. So any questions we can ask Sam or ask Ron. Also, we wanted to make you aware that we will be using our Google Drives less and less, and we'll be really migrating to keeping everything on YouTube and then just emailing handouts to you from any of our trainings and our meetings. If there's something that you're looking for and you can't find it, please reach out to me or to your portfolio manager and we can find it for you. One of the reasons that we're going to be doing less with our Google Drives is that during a recent audit, they found that some of the information that's in our different Google Drives is outdated or hasn't been updated for a while, or there might be, other guidance that's being recommended at this time. So really just keeping all of those recordings on YouTube and then keeping handouts emailed should help clean up that problem. Also, we heard the great recommendation from a colleague that if you end up watching any of our trainings on YouTube, you can watch it at 2 times speed. So you can be twice as effective with your time, pause if you need to, and hopefully you'll find that more helpful than just the Zoom links. So if you have any questions with that or can't find something, just let us know. All the recordings from all the trainings that we're doing. So not just directors meeting, but when we did our teacher training last month, that's up there now. Our board member meetings, those are there. Our business administrator meetings. So everything will be on our YouTube channel. If you don't follow our YouTube channel, it's just SCSB. And so easy to find. There also was sent out an opportunity for students. It's our 22nd annual Do the Right Thing Challenge. And you'll notice that right, there's a little play on words there. So it is an essay challenge for 7th and 8th grade students. And the invitation is from our governor. And they can begin writing now in October and they're due in January. If that's something that you're interested in, check that email, or I've put here Kong's information. She's a preventative specialist and her phone number is there as well. A few of our schools have applied for OEK. If you remember, we opened that up for some additional entries last month, and we are finally at the answer stage. So that is on consent for Thursday's State Charter School Board meeting. And then all schools will receive their official notification on Friday, October 15th. Of course, everything is pending approval, but I can say that you should be expecting good news. So we are excited for that information to come out to you later this week. Then we have our upcoming training and support from the State Charter School Board. I put our 2 months on here right now, so our October and our November. Today, you are at the formative assessment, data-driven decision-making, and really just leadership for high academic success. Then we have that last week of the month, we have our board training that is all about purposeful board governance that makes a difference. We have our teacher training where we're going to be talking about social emotional support strategies. And then our business and finance training is what to expect during a SPED fiscal monitoring visit. So we're very excited for those. Looking ahead to next month, each one has some special presenters coming. November 30th will be all about board composition and recruitment. November 8th, as I mentioned, at directors meeting, we'll have Vice Chair Brian Bowles here, and he'll be talking about giving feedback for impact to your teachers. November 18th, that is a little different from our normal schedule, but we figured none of your teachers would want to come on Thanksgiving. And so classroom games, and this is going to be with SCSB member Spiker, Stephanie Spiker, who is a master educator and teaches pre-service educators up at Weber State, and she's going to be talking about classroom games. So we're so excited for that. And then of course, USBE will have their fall training event, and the date is still to be determined on that, but as soon as we have that, we will send it out to you. The other trainings to be aware of today, as we mentioned, is our Board Leadership Academy session 2. And then session 3 will be November 9th. So if you love it today and would like to join in again on with our education board partners, then they would love to have you join them in November. We do have a special training coming up on November 2nd, and this is a fraud prevention training. And we have Special Agent Sandra Ennis, who's coming from the U.S. Department of Education to talk about fraud prevention. We have all of our UAPCS trainings listed there. It looks like I might have the wrong date for the fall convening, so I'll make sure that I double check that with Joylyn. I think she said it was on the 20th. So we'll make sure that we get that all coordinated and sent out to you. Also looking ahead, we have 10 schools that are going to be participating in a special symposium with Brian Carpenter, and that will be for some mentoring and coaching and development just in really small group settings. And we have, remember, like I said, 10 schools that will be participating here. And if that goes well, we will be soliciting their feedback, and then we'll be opening up for another symposium offering probably in the spring. So if that's something you're interested in, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Also in December, and then again in January, we have Rich Hageland from RH3 Consulting, who's going to be doing some training on budgeting and fiscal management, and should be some really good information. And then at Direction, we typically have done a charter seminar on teaching best practices. And we've done that in October, January, and April. And we've done that for the past couple of years. And as we've looked at our data, we've found that January has traditionally been 2 to 3 times as many participants as our October or April sessions. And so we are going to do a giant like January extravaganza. And so all of the training will be occurring in January, and we'll send out more information as that gets closer. But so that you're aware of what's going on with that, this year we are focusing just on our K-3 teachers. Of course, everyone's invited. So if you would still like to send someone from an older grade, they are certainly welcome to join us. But we are really focusing in on our K-3 teachers. The reason for that is that as we've been talking with USBE, we have had over half of our schools over the past 5 years who have missed 1 or more year on hitting their early literacy goal, which is that 60% proficiency. And so we really want to narrow in on our early literacy, because early literacy gives us that baseline for everything else. Students can't access their math story problems or their science and their writing and their all the different work that we want them to do if they're struggling to read. And so we really want to make sure that we are giving this deep dive into early literacy. And so please kind of keep January in mind, that January will be the super session for our K-3 educators. You might also want to invite a literacy coach or an academic director if you have those at your school, and that we can really use that information to help move that needle for charter schools where we want to get it less. We don't want to have more than half of our schools not meeting that goal. We want to make sure that our kids can read and that our kids can access their materials. So January should be tremendously exciting with that. Should be a really good one. So those are some things to keep in mind. I think we made it. I think we finished right before 1 o'clock. So if there are any questions, please drop them in chat and I will get on those. Let me see here. Few people said Rich Hageland is amazing. Take advantage when he comes. That's excellent. I guess I spelled his name wrong, so I will make sure to fix that. As far as the meetings from the other departments of the state, my understanding is that they should be starting to come on YouTube as well. That was some direction from our state superintendency.
Hey, I'm just looking at
the Google Drives as much. Let's see. I don't think that the training will be in conflict with the letters training going on, and we'll make sure that we check on those dates. But kind of like we did with Brian Carpenter in the spring, where we had like 3 different sessions you could pick from. It'll kind of be a choose your own adventure type of one where you can pick from multiple days and times for that January training. So I think, let's see. Oh, the name again for the essay and writing contest. It's Do the Right Thing, and I will make sure to send that out as well in our email. And I think that takes care of everyone. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining us for all those quick announcements. And I will turn the time back over to Shireen, who will get us started with our EBP wonderful training today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Marie. I'm just going to, hello, everybody. We're going to be letting the other folks in. And then we'll be transitioning to our other. Thank you so much for joining us. Also, we're so happy to have so many people. I'm looking for my colleague. I know Debbie is on here.
I am here. Welcome, welcome, everyone.
Oh, hi, Debbie. Okay, good. I wanted to make you co-host and I couldn't find your little thumbnail. Awesome.
Actually, I need, yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, and then, let's see. Okay, great. So again, we're delighted to have all of you here. We have an extra large group today. And we just want to give a few more minutes for other folks to join.
Hey, everyone. As you see this slide, think about what was your favorite grade school memory and go ahead and just put that in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. It helps ground us in keeping our students in the room, as we say, as you think about this training today and how important it is for your work as board members. How do you continue to keep the kids in the room? Well, think about what it was like for you in grade school.
Yeah, I already see presidential election day party. That sounds fun. Wow, yes, the Challenger. I was walking with my daughter and maybe we were driving and we drove by her, my daughter's 10, and we drove by her daycare. And I asked her if she remembered. I said, I know you know that's where you went to daycare, but do you remember anything about it? And she said she remembered the birthday party that she had there, and she remembered the theme and all that. I didn't even remember that, but so we definitely have some memories from childhood that absolutely stick with us. Space unit, space ice cream. These are some great things. Third grade spelling bee. School plays. Yes, I remember Guys and Dolls. Oh, some great books. Another spelling bee. These are great things. Awesome to think about what we remember. So Debbie, I'll keep watching to admit others as they come, but I think we can begin.
Fantastic. Marie, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just so sorry about that. But as we're getting started
shouldn't
here,
have taken the bite of
I'm
sandwich.
so sorry. I'm so sorry. As we get started here, I just wondered if you might want to give a quick overview of who's here for our participants in this training so they know.
I'm saving it all up for Harry Potter. So all the candy I'm currently buying.
I would love to. Okay, so this is our Board Leadership Academy, and this was something that board members could sign up for. School leaders could also sign up for it, of course, as well. And it is being led by Education Board Partners, which is a new group that we're contracting with and that we are so excited to work with. Shireen and Debbie are from EBP and are just delightful. You will love them today. This is such an important topic about academics and leadership and the connection that lies there and how our leadership can lead to better academic outcomes. And so when we saw that topic and realized that, October is a weird month where our directors meeting is on a Tuesday, it felt like the universe aligned and said, let's bring these people together. And so for our board members who are here, we're so happy you're here for session 2. For our charter directors, we begged and pleaded and asked really nicely, and Shireen and Debbie were kind enough to join forces with us. And so we've got our board leadership teams here, we've got school directors here for directors meeting, and really this is a topic that is of so much importance and to everyone in this call about how our leadership can drive the academics at our school. And so really on this call today, we have great leaders, awesome people meeting other awesome people. It's going to be a good day. So Debbie, does that cover anything else you'd like me to throw into that?
That was perfect. Thank you so much. Just wanted to make sure that everyone understood why we have such a large group this time. So thank you so much. Thanks. So for those of you who may be new to Zoom or may remember that Zoom is the new way that we're doing things in this world, if you have trouble with your with any of your connectivity, turning off your video may be helpful. Also, you can feel free to turn off your video, but one thing that those of you who appeared and participated last time will know is that we really try to make these sessions extremely interactive. And so we want to hear from you. We want to see you. We want you to engage with the materials that we're sharing with you. So if you can keep your video on, we would love that so we can see your smiling faces. Again, we are on session 2, which is extremely exciting, and we will just reintroduce ourselves. Marie, thank you for that quick overview. Shireen Williams and I, Debbie Lister, are part of Education Board Partners. We are a national nonprofit that is working to support nonprofit boards in education. And we are excited to be with you today to talk about this subject. Today, we are going to talk about best practices in academic oversight. It is your role as the board to have academic oversight. So you have oversight over the academics at the school. And what does that mean? What does that look like? We're going to talk about that. We're going to really understand how to use data to drive high performance of all students. And we're going to talk about committees and how to operationalize their functioning so that you can divide and conquer and dig deep into data and have effective board meetings and get all the information that you need. Just a reminder of our community agreements. We are going to agree that we'll all participate fully and be present. So please do take yourself off mute when it's time to speak. Feel free to put things in chat if you have any questions. Ask questions of us. No question is a bad question. As we shared last time, nobody goes to school to become a charter school board member. So think of this as your primer to understand all the things that you need to know to really provide that oversight and support to your school so it'll be successful and sustainable. Make sure that you're listening for understanding and valuing different points. One thing that is important in this work is because we have so many different schools represented here, we really encourage you to take lessons from what you're hearing here, but don't associate any names or schools with those when you share those. We want you to use lessons. So we say stories stay, lessons leave. And then make sure that you're here for a reason, you signed up for a reason. So let's use this to the best of our intentions and really lean in and enjoy and explore everything that we're doing today. As a reminder, last session, we talked about these 6 standards for effective charter school governance. And these standards, as you may remember, are what Education Board Partners uses in all of our trainings. We really believe that if boards are focusing on these 6 things, and found it with the foundation of centering on people, equity, and culture, this is the work of the board. So before we move on, I'd really just love to ask, we put a lot of materials into your live binder, which is that online toolkit that we shared with you last week, or after this session last month. So I want to ask you, come off mute or put into chat. What did you think of those resources? What were some things that stuck with you that you really appreciated? And then what about the session from last time? Was there anything that you implemented since we've seen you in the last month. Go ahead, come off mute or put it in chat. We'd love to hear what you're thinking about so far, how these sessions are going. Don't be shy. Well, I'll encourage you to put things in chat and we'll keep moving.
Thank you, Debbie. And as Debbie mentioned, these standards for effective governance are kind of what we consider sort of our guideposts, our rules to live by. We created these a few years ago after talking to boards across the country. And the question that they always asked was, what are charter school board members supposed to do? And so we feel like these standards help you to answer that question and to organize yourselves. And number one, we feel is honestly the most important, right? Focus relentlessly on student achievement, because that is why we are all here. And I see a couple things in the chat. Okay, somebody's saying a lot of the people here today weren't here last month. So that's why they were so quiet about what happened last month, which is fine. I'm sorry, my clicker is jumping around. So one of the things that we have seen over the years, our organization, we're going into our 11th year, actually. We just had our 10th year anniversary. And one of the things that we've been able to do just from working nationally with all types of charter schools from coast to coast is sort of cobble together what we think are some of the common governance bad practices, like things that a lot of the boards all seem to struggle with. And you'll notice number two is academic oversight, right? Many folks sort of mistakenly believe that they're going to leave academics to the school leader, and that as the board members, they don't have to worry about that, right? They have to make sure that the money is in the bank and make sure the laws are followed, but they're really not going to concern themselves with the academics. And as you and I know, that is absolutely not the case, right? One of our favorite quotes, we don't have it here today, but we always say, if management is about running the business, then governance is about making sure it's run properly. And so for board members, you really need to provide the oversight over the academics to ensure that the school is living up to its mission and delivering for parents and students. So since you weren't here last week, one of the things we introduced were homerooms, and you won't exactly be in your homerooms, but you'll be in small groups. And for us, a big part of this training is not just the expertise that we're sharing and discussions that we're having, but the networking and the thought partnership that you get from your colleagues. And so today, when we put you in groups, we have a little case study that we're going to ask you to think about and talk about with your small group before we all come back together. Those are homerooms, but like I said, you'll be slightly different groups than these. I'm sorry that my thing keeps skipping. Okay, so this is our case study. It is about Summit Public Charter School. I'll even read it quickly. Summit Public Charter School is in its 8th year with its founding school leader, Sharon Rice. The school has 500 students in grades K to 5. The first 3 years were great. The school was rated an A, and Sharon received an award for her leadership. Over the past 5 years, the school has seen a decline in academics and high rates of teacher turnover. In fact, it is February and 1/3 of the teachers have quit. The school has a number of long-term subs covering classes, and Sharon has yet to communicate with parents about the issue. Most parents only find out when their child reports that they have had a substitute teacher for several days. Parents have now begun to ask lots of questions. They're beginning to approach staff at pickup and drop off. They want to know why so many teachers are leaving mid-year. The board chair is accustomed to following Sharon's lead and has great faith in her. He and some of the long-serving board members think Sharon can do no wrong. They are sure it must be the low-performing teachers that are leaving and aren't too worried about the turnover. Besides, they've heard that all charter schools have high teacher turnover. There is a small contingent of relatively new board members who feel a sense of urgency around the matter. They fear parents will pull their students and enrollment as well as the school's reputation will suffer. They want to see more data and also hear from not just the school leader about academics and school culture, but they don't know where to start. So we're going to put you in groups where we'd like you to consider the following. What challenges do you identify? What could the board have put in place to prevent this from happening? I think we have an extra word there. And as a member of this board, what would you do next? I love these case studies because most of the time, the first thing people say is, I'm glad I'm not on this board. But for today, you have to consider as a member of this board, what might you do? And Debbie is going to go ahead and place everyone in small groups for that conversation. And you're going to have about 10 minutes.
And I just put this case study into chat, so you can reread it if you need to in your groups. We're putting you in groups, random groups this time. And so feel free, first start to just quickly read it yourself, think about some things, jot a couple of things down, say hello to one another. We're actually going to give you 10 minutes in your session, and then think about what you'd want to share with a larger group from what you would do next and what the board could have put in place to prevent this from happening. And we'll have a discussion when everyone comes back. So I'm opening all the rooms now, and you should fly away and enjoy meeting some new people.
Debbie, what time do they come back? I should have been paying attention.
They'll come back at 3:35.
Okay, thanks.
No worries.
3:19. Wait, it's 3:19 now? Okay.
Oh yeah, 3:30. We'll come back at 3:30. I think that will work.
Yeah, I just realized I did the timing starting from 3:30 instead of starting from 3. Oh. So the break is actually 4:10 to 4:20. don't know what my computer is doing.
Could you go back to the case study? Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, my space bar
Oh,
is skipping slides.
oh,
It's the second or third time it's been doing that to me. So I need to figure that out.
they have 5 more minutes.
Okay. Welcome, Jennifer. Folks are in a few breakout rooms working on a case study.
So Jennifer, everyone will come back in about 2 minutes, but this is the case study here on the screen if you want to just take a look at it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And to you as well, all of our folks are in breakout rooms right now, but everyone will be coming back. They're working on this case study that is up on the screen. And when they come back, we'll talk about it as a group. So feel free to read through it, and it will happily let you participate in the conversation when everyone comes back. All right, I'm going to bring back our participants and we will get started in just a minute.
So welcome back, everyone. We hope you had a good discussion in your group. So we wanted to start out with just talking about what were the challenges you identified in this scenario. What are the challenges for this board? You can raise your hand, you can come off mute.
So we'd love it if each group could go. So I should have shared that you should have a spokesperson or you all can speak. There weren't that many of you in each of the groups. So why don't we start with group one?
I haven't any idea what what number we were, but I'm happy to share that our small group, we discussed that communication was definitely a challenge at every level. Shireen, when you said a challenge for this board, yeah, it was a challenge for this board, but it was also a challenge within the school as well for parents and teachers and faculty and staff. And so the idea of making sure that we needed to have more stakeholder feedback coming in and more of that and student performance data and more of that shared with more people, including the board regularly. So there were no surprises.
Great, thank you, Tess.
You're welcome.
Anybody else want to share? Any other challenges they identified?
We just talked about, again, the data, and as board members, they need to see data on an ongoing basis. In this case, we want to look at not just the last 2 years that weren't going well, but the first 3 years where things were going well and see what the difference is. The other thing is the board has to attend to, in this case study, the fact that teachers are leaving and there may not be competent teaching in the current positions. They've got to react to that right away. And maybe not, and then go into the progression of what got them there in the first place.
Love that. Thank you, Brett. And so we had Tess make some great comments. Brett made some great comments. Can I get one other person to maybe touch on the relationship with the school leader?
One thing that we talked about was really holding the director or principal accountable for the goals that they've set for the school, and making sure that not only are those goals set with the leader, but also institutionally, so that the teachers and the staff are clear on what those expectations and goals are. And that gives hopefully a safer place to return to in that dialogue, where you can actually discuss where the wheels are falling off and where things are, what resources are needed to get things back on track, but being clear on what those goals are as an institution. So
great, thank you for that, Nathan. You were putting us on the path to some things that could have been put in place as well. And I noticed a comment, and I think it was from Amy, who talked about doing exit interviews with the teachers and trying to really understand why people were leaving and what was making them unhappy. So what are the other things that could have been put in place? I'm going to grab the chat again. Jen has a question. Nathan, can I ask you how your board holds your director accountable for their goals? You know what? I think we are definitely going to get into that, and I'll give Nathan time to share later. But that is a great question that I can't wait to dig into. What else should have been put in place by the board? We definitely heard about exit interviews. Nathan just talked about goals that everybody knows about and are held accountable to. Anything else? Any systems or structures?
Yeah, one thing we talked about, I was in Brett's group, was, how is it that 5 years have passed and now this question is being raised? So, these are things that should be brought up almost every board meeting. You're discussing, looking at the newest data you have and trying to figure out, make sure you're on track.
Exactly. So we could definitely say that these people are asleep at the wheel. Thank you for that. Wait, and I have another chat. Are they doing an annual climate survey? Yep. Great question. These are all things that sort of speak to what the board's role is. We always say no surprises, right? So that speaks to originally what Tess was talking about in terms of good communication, right? So we don't have surprises. And then what others have alluded to of this ongoing look at data and asking great questions. And so the last piece, which is you are on this board, and I know that's a scary scenario, but you are on this board. What would you do next? Like, what's the immediate next step for this board? Martell, are you speaking again? You're on mute, but I see your box is lit up in Zoom speak.
Oh, I wasn't, but I could still chime in.
Okay.
I'll turn my video on too. So I think, the comments brought about exit interviews and climate surveys are really helpful. But one thing that came up in our discussion was, so what is it that made the first 3 years so successful, and what has changed in that time frame? And I think someone in our group, maybe I think Brett or someone brought up, well, is the director, is Sharon sick now and she's not able to to hold up like she was the first few years? I mean, there could be innumerable things that could have happened there. And what are those? And really, you can't start take action until you understand the situation.
So sort of diagnosing what's going on. I like the attention to the school leader. In some of our other trainings, we emphasize not just in the communication, but in the relationship. School leaders are doing just an enormous job and just remembering that they are people and that things are happening. So you're very right. Like, something could be going wrong in this life of the leader. And so that's something to check in on too, right? Like, not just the job, but how are you doing? Appreciate that. I'm going to check the chat really quickly before we move on. Yep, Jennifer, meet with the director, increase communication, request academic data. So, yeah, I talked about that.
So I'll jump in here. I think this goes back even before. And it goes back to something Nathan alluded to. A lot of charter schools were formed with a board that is forming that for a specific mission. And I hire a director to support that specific mission. But the relationship between a board and its director can't be that cozy. They are in charge of that director, and they've got to task that director to bring material and information and data about what is actually going on in the school. If you don't have that relationship and they're not asking their questions, yeah, they can be blindsided. And it takes some time. It's a lot easier as a director to have a board that rubber stamps everything until you get in trouble or until you have a problem. We've been working here to get our board to be a functioning working board, and it happened right in time with COVID, and they made all the tough decisions. I didn't really have to. I just had to implement what they wanted. Had we had a rubber stamp board at that time, COVID would have been much more difficult than it was. So even while they were good, I would say there's probably something going on there that was problematic, that needed to be fixed in terms of the communication between the board and what was happening. So there's several things I think have to happen. You got to fix the fact that you got teachers leaving and you got problems in the classroom and you got kids potentially leaving. That can shut down a school. Then you've got to go back and diagnose what went into it. Board, like everybody said, they've got to figure out why people are leaving. What's going on? Is it culture? Is it leadership? What is it? But I think part of that goes back to how do you view your board, and how does your board view their job at directing the director, if you will? And I'll probably talk too much.
No. I love it. Thank you all for participating. And Brett, I like what you said, because immediately when you started talking, your comments made me think of how we always talk about evaluation and support, right? They're both two equal sides of that relationship with the school leader. And so sometimes if folks are too chummy, that can be an issue. What about, as we're wrapping up here, what about the parents, right? The parents are asking a lot of questions. They're in the dark. They're just hearing from their kids that they've had substitute after substitute. What should the board do there? Anybody? This is when I date myself and I go, Bueller? Anybody? No.
Ooh, I know.
Hey.
So communicate. So I think the board needs to really have that conversation with their school leader and ask that school leader to explain what the communication plan is going to be with families, given that they have, that there's some concerns going on, and their stakeholders, who are their students and their families and the staff, really needs to understand what the next steps are and what's been happening and what's going to be put in place. How can the board work with the school leader to over communicate to families that they are on top of this, that they are going to work together, that they care about these families and students and want to serve them well.
Thank you for that. And I saw in the chat, Andrew said it's really hard for the board to say anything until they know what's going on, which is true, right? And so the board, this is one of those times where it is so valuable to have a communications person on the board, because the board wants to communicate that they are taking the right steps. But Andrew, you're absolutely right. There's some fact finding that they have to do. So that communication is going to have to be crafted very carefully. Thank you all so much. That was great. And I'm going to turn it over to Debbie to talk about the role of the board more specifically.
Absolutely. Thanks, Shireen. And thank you all for all of those great ideas. We find that it is often easier to solve other people's problems than it is your own. When we do case studies, these are all designed from situations that we've seen, that we've heard of, that we've been involved with. And so hopefully you don't find yourself on the end of one of these case studies, but it is very helpful for you as you start thinking about what are some things that you can implement on your board. So the role of the board in academics. So it is your responsibility, as we talked about so many times. The board really needs to provide oversight around academics. One thing we talked about last month was a lot of us who are sitting around board tables may not have gone to school to be an educator. We may not have that understanding of academic data. We may not really understand what some of the data is saying to us. But as a board, you need to make very important decisions around how that academic data is playing out in your school. And so we strongly encourage you as a board to have a training. Don't just let the person that has the academic knowledge lead all those decisions. You as a board, everyone should have enough training to level set around what are the things you need to know to make informed decisions on behalf of all the students and families at your school. So the first thing that you should have a conversation around, if you have not yet, or if this is something that you need to reset, and it's okay if you do, we're here for this reason. The first thing you really need to understand is, how does your school define and measure student achievement? And when you think about that, that is what someone earlier mentioned around the goals. So talking about with your school leader, how is student achievement measured? What do we believe are the metrics, the measurements, those milestones that our scholars need to reach in order to be successful? What does that look like? What does achievement look like? And then in order to kind of ensure that you are doing all the things that you promised your families, go back to your charter, go back to your strategic plan, look at what those targets are, use those as some of those milestones and metrics. Make sure that when goal setting is happening every year and your school leader brings you the goals that they've set with their staff around academics, make sure that you understand what those goals are. Ask questions around the rigor, ask questions around how that will get you to the ultimate success of your students, and that you are ensuring that you're going to meet all those targets in your strategic plan, your short-term strategic plan, as well as in your charter. So what does this look like? Something that we talked about last month was that you really want to look at data not in the aggregate, not where everything comes into one space, but really disaggregating that data so that you can see where you may need some intervention, some support, who in your school is not experiencing or achieving the same way as others. So as we talked about, really working with your school leader to define what your subgroups are, and then looking at the data disaggregated by those subgroups. Remember that you need to track and track the participation in not just what happens at the school, but other high quality learning experiences. So are your students, like what are the students who are achieving doing? Just like we were looking at before with your, what was happening, getting to the root cause. What are the students that are achieving? What courses are they taking? What other participation are they having? Like, is it all tied and connected? Everyone have access to the same courses and the same ability to find these opportunities? Make sure that you have a plan to eliminate those disparities, and then ensuring that you have targets to increase the equitable outcomes. One of the biggest levers that you have as a board is that budget, approving the budget and your resources. And so thinking about, what do certain areas in your school need to achieve? Is it more interventions? Asking the questions, looking for recommendations. This is where your school performance committee really comes into play. Hopefully you have a lot of experts of academic data and education on your board so that they can help speak the language of academic data, speak the language of these potential recommendations or interventions with the rest of the committee, hopefully, which is made up of your school leader or some of the leadership team that really focuses on academics. And those conversations really happening so that when you are set to create your budget, the budget will reflect all of that. There was a good question in here in the chat around how are boards supposed to have access to data. And if the school leader is the one providing and framing the data, is there an opportunity for bias there? These are great questions. So let's talk a little bit about how you as a board really organize and who's responsible for what. Because you're right, with both of those questions, how does the board get the data? And then could the data be biased from the school leader? What we want to share with you is that, yes, all of that could be true. First, we want to make sure that you have set goals. That's what we talked about before, setting goals, and you're going to be looking at data connected to those goals. Second is that building of trust with your school leader. You want to be able to have the relationship with your leader that they can share things that are going well, but also share things that may be off track and they need your support around. So building that trusting, candid relationship is huge. And then you want to have the different ways that you're going to get this data. This is where we're going to kind of look at these different who plays what roles. So as you think about the task of setting long-term and annual academic goals, your school leader is going to lead that process. That may be in cooperation with your school performance committee, or they may be doing that simply with their own team, their leadership team, and then bringing that to the school performance committee or your academic committee, however you call that, for discussion. Then what we're doing in the academic committee is really reviewing and collaborating around that, determining if these are the right metrics, determining if these are strong enough metrics, if they're achievable, all of the things that you think about to make sure that your students are really have the opportunity for a high quality education. And those recommendations of these draft goals will go to the board, the full board, for discussion and approval. And that is what you're going to be looking at. That's the data that's going to inform, are these goals being met? Are we making progress towards these goals along the school year? The next step is monitoring those academic results again. So the school staff populates the dashboard. They highlight the progress and they're interpreting the results on their end. But the academic committee is also looking at that data, making sure that the data that's in that dashboard or the progress monitoring system, whatever you are using to look at the data against the goals, is what is needed to understand the progress. Are you making progress? Asking questions, and then really helping to get that data in a presentation for the full board to understand, are the students on track to achieve these annual goals? Is our school leader leading towards sufficient results? If we are off track, what should we be looking for? What are the recommendations that we've seen or heard from within the school academic committee that we want to make sure the board understands so we can continue to be looking at that? So let's look at what this looks like. Yes, go ahead, Martel.
Quick comment there. So the nice thing is that the way things should be happening, of course, is that the director and his team are always looking at those things anyway, and they're just sharing what they're finding as they gather the data. So as a board member, if we have to be asking for that stuff routinely, then it makes me wonder, okay, is this really the right leader for our school if this is not something that's at the top of his or her mind fairly regularly?
Great question. And I'm going to flip that a little because I also talk to a lot of school leaders. We work with school leaders and boards a lot. And more times than not, when school leaders say to us, when we're talking about this aspect of academic data. They say, well, I don't know what they need to know. We look at data, and we're going to show you a graphic of kind of like the funnel of how much data there is at a school. As everyone knows, you have individual student data, you have classroom data, you have grade level data, you have all sorts of subject data. The board doesn't need to see all that data. It would take too much time, and it's not what you need to help make decisions. But oftentimes school leaders kind of get stuck in, we're looking at all this data at the school level. Like I work with my teachers and I see, we're talking about data all the time, but what does the board really need in order to feel comfortable that we're doing the best job that we can, that we're meeting these goals? And so I say that in the sense that, yes, you may feel like, why aren't they telling us these things? If they're, they should be looking at these things. They're looking at a lot more than they're sharing with you, for the reason that they don't need to overwhelm you. Some of the things that they're looking at wouldn't help you in any way, which is why you defining with your school leader as a board, specifically through that academic committee, is going to help understand what is the data that needs to be shared? How does it need to be shared? How often does it need to be shared? And that is what we're trying to get at here, so that boards aren't overwhelmed, school leaders aren't overwhelmed, and everyone has what they need. Does that kind of answer what you were getting at?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you. Please feel free to ask any questions that you have. So the board's role in academic oversight is really reviewing that data by subgroup, by disaggregated data, asking questions, making sure that you're allocating dollars to meet the needs. When you are looking at your budget, as we talked about, or if you need to course correct in the middle of the year, what are these dollars going to be used for? How will we know that they're actually making a difference? Let's make sure that we're tracking that, so that if this is something that really is going to move the needle for our students, we're thinking about that next year's budget. Reviewing all of those plans that your school leader and the academic committee brings to you about how you're really going to close those gaps, and monitor. Make sure that you have all the data you need to make some of these decisions, and really holding your school leader accountable. So you set these academic goals with your school leader in their school leader evaluation. This is something that you're looking towards, but you're not going to do that just at the end of the year and said, haha, you didn't make it, too bad. You're really going to be following the progress of these goals all along, having conversations with your school leader, understanding what your school leader is attempting to do, if there's needs to be some course correction around that they're not meeting the goals. What else do they need? What kind of support do they need? Do some of the experts in education need to support that? Do some of the experts on the board in technology need to support that? Like, what are the things that you really need to help ensure that those goals are being met? And then obviously your school leader's role and the school's role is to, deliver that curriculum, determine the curriculum, deliver that curriculum. That's the curriculum that they believe is going to meet those goals. And let them do that. And they're administering the assessments, and some of those assessments might come back to you. Some of them may not. They may come back at certain times throughout the year. And I loved in this chat that someone mentioned that their board has a calendar of topics for the board to be aware of and what to expect. And that is really important. So again, you want to have these heavy conversations around data around the time when you have the data. So not every assessment is going to warrant a full conversation with the board around how things are doing. But if you're having a high stakes predictive assessment, you really want to have a conversation when that data comes back around, what did we learn? How are we doing? Where do we, are there places that you, school leader, feel like you and your team are really going to focus on? And what can we as a board be supporting, either through our budget or through other ways? And what should we be monitoring? Those are kind of the questions that you want to make sure that you're looking at. All right, so as you are thinking about your own schools academic oversight. I think we have seen way too many news stories that are negative around the board asleep at the wheel, not paying attention, as we showed you in that case study. Years have gone by and things have been taking a downward trajectory in those academics. So what would you want to see as your board's academic oversight? What would the headline be? And when we're thinking headlines, remember, think more like a tweet versus a book. So what is the headline that you'd want to see about your board's academic oversight? And put it in the chat, please.
I know most schools, your number one goal is to stay out of the paper, but we want to think about a great headline.
The chat is open. Feel free to write your headline.
Careful consideration of academic data leads to progress and success. Love that. Love it. All right, I'm going to come back and read some others while we move on. Thank you so much, Debbie. And so we're going to talk about data-driven decision-making. We have just in the first few minutes of this session talked about data quite a few times. I see in the chat, board partners with school leadership to ensure academic progress. Love it, love it. And so data is very important. And I've often heard it said, and maybe just by me, but I've often heard it said that making good decisions is the board's most important job and individual board members' most important job. And I think in the last session, when we were talking about the general duties of board members, the care, loyalty, and obedience, and that care means that you get all the information that you need to make good decisions, that your judgment is informed, that when you're voting to approve something or to change something, it is based on you having the accurate knowledge. So board members, that's a requirement, right? Now, Debbie alluded to this chart before, our little favorite funnel that we like to share, because we know, again, if you haven't been an educator, if you haven't been exposed to this data before, it can be very overwhelming. And we're certainly not expecting you to pull through reams of data like the school leader and his or her staff have to do as they are going through the day-to-day management of the school and trying to figure out what changes they need to make and looking at individual student level data. We want to introduce sort of the two other levels of data. There's that school performance committee, and I think Debbie's going to talk about that committee specifically later in the session to talk about like who's on it and what they should do. But what we're saying is that school performance committee, in collaborating with the school leader and his or her staff, they are going to look at a little bit more data than the full board might look at. Still not all of the data that is going to be available at the school level, but maybe a bigger snapshot. And this also speaks to some of you when you were talking about can a school leader color data to tell the story that they absolutely, which is why we think it's so important to have this committee and to have them collaborating with school staff. When we get to the very bottom of the funnel, we're talking about board level data. And it's really important to ask ourselves, what are the key data points that will help us to understand the overall health of the school? And we know it's an academic committee, but we also know people tend to call it a school performance committee because we know that we're looking at more than just test scores, because we know that there are other things besides test scores that are impacting this. Before I move on, I want to see some more headlines because I think they are good. Board overhaul the standards of oversight for higher achievement and accountability. I love it. I love it. That speaks to making some positive moves, Jen. reverse trend noted at AIM, students of color are outperforming their Caucasian peers in APCE classes. Real story, like that. Based on recent events, Monticello Academy Board digs into COVID educational data. I'm not into a marketing guy. I love, Marie, I love all these headlines as well. I love to sort of sit back and think about what could be. So love it. And I already see percolating some ideas of people sort of changing how they want to do this. So as I mentioned, yes, I hear somebody.
Back on the previous slide, as a board member, the nice thing is if you have your goals set appropriately, then what we want to know as a board is pretty simple. You know, how are we tracking according to those goals? But they have to be correctly set goals.
Thank you, Martell. And that's absolutely right, because I think it was Jen who asked earlier, how are we holding leaders accountable? So when we look at academic oversight, right, we want to look at a variety of things. Yes, we want to look at those set academic targets. So back to what Debbie said and what Martell is saying, we have said in our charter, in our strategic plan, in the leaders' goals for the year, somewhere we have said, this is what we should be doing. X% of students are going to hit this in math. X% of students are going to hit this. You know, if you have some special program in your school, you know, X% of students are going to be proficient in French, like whatever is going on, we're going to set those targets and make them ambitious. We also want to talk about discipline. I know for some schools, you need to take a look, one, because we know in different jurisdictions, they've started publishing this data, right? Taking a look at, are there some schools that are being more harsh in their discipline than others? But also just thinking about who's being disciplined, and also, is this impacting class time, right? Students are being suspended or expelled, like what's going on? I know a lot of times board members may think, you know, that's out of our control. We don't have to think about that, but you do have to think about that, right? Because you also want to be able to notice when issues are coming up. It's just like in the case study, right? You don't want to get to the end of the year and learn, well, half the teachers quit in February, right? You don't want to get to the end of the year and say, wow, so last year we had only 2 suspensions all year, and this year we have 25. Like, what happened? These are things that you have to monitor all the time to see the trends. Lateness and attendance goals absolutely affects academics and performance. If kids are not there and kids are late, enrollment and mobility, like that other case study talked about, are students and families staying? Are they leaving? Where are they going? Why are they leaving? School culture. What is going on? I remember my daughter's school when they used to do the survey across the district, and one of the questions was, I enjoy my school. And my daughter's school actually had the highest percentage of kids. I think it was 95% of kids saying they really enjoyed and liked their school, right? That would be a wonderful, wonderful outcome, to know that the kids that are coming into your building every day actually like it and look forward to being there. And also that school leader evaluation, right? What parts of the data are things that we're going to be looking at when we prepare that leaders evaluation, and knowing that that leaders evaluation is not just one thing in time, but that you're looking throughout the year, right? So it's definitely the goals and the academic targets, but you're also looking at, in an earlier chat, people were talking about climate surveys, climate and culture surveys, and all of that. And we'll talk about that because we have a session exactly on school leader evaluation and support. But really knowing and understanding, what this slide is really wanting you to see is that there's a whole picture. It's not just looking at test scores, but really what are all of the things that clue us in to the overall health of our school.
Hey, Shireen, I want to pause for 1 second. We had a question from that asked, does social emotional learning play a role in board's oversight? And if so, how should it factor in and to what extent? And then someone else added on to that, how would you measure it?
Yes, so absolutely. I will say One, social emotional learning actually definitely factors into all of this. And I know folks are not struggling with, but just trying to determine how they measure that. And I think it really has to depend on what exactly you are doing, like what those strategies are. I'll definitely open it up to the floor. Hold on, I see another thing in chat. Are there folks in here right now? Will we be able to see the slide deck after this training? Yes. So we, Tess, we have created a live binder, and it has the deck, it has the recording. We've asked folks for their headshots, and we also include tools, right? So when we do school leader evaluation and support, our actual tool about how to evaluate a head of school is going to be in there. So we are happy to not only provide this deck, but to provide tools which support. But I wanted to just ask if there are folks right here in this Zoom who have thought of great ways to measure social emotional learning. And Debbie, tell me if you see any hands that I don't see. I know it's something that folks are trying to get their hands around, especially in thinking about what is it that we're doing and what is it that we want to convey to the board in terms of how that is going. So that is something that we actually might have to revisit.
Yeah, and another thing, again, you know, when we think about board level, what are you monitoring? What are you looking at? What do you need to make decisions? If social emotional learning is something that your school is really focused on, if it's part of your mission, if it's part of how you know, that some interventions that the school has put in place to see if that makes a difference, that's where you should be using a goal around that. So really working with your school leader to come up with a goal and asking them, how would you measure this to make sure that the data is showing the effect of these interventions. So you as a board don't need to do this alone, but do it in collaboration with your school leader. But if it is part of your mission or as part of something that you're doing differently this year and you want to see how it affects and impacts it, certainly ask your school leader and put that as a goal and monitor it.
And I see in the chat that Nathan says Terrace Metrics is a good tool for measuring SEL and provides curriculum that can supplement the areas of concern and progress, and survey data tracks progress. So I think that's awesome, sort of combining what Debbie said and what Nathan said. What Debbie said about you're not in this alone, you're actually working with the school leader, especially if the board is allocating money to special programs. And we know that with COVID, lots of students have had challenges and schools have really been looking at what additional supports they can provide. And so that's a conversation that you have together. So thank both of you for that.
Shireen, can I just add a quick comment?
Yes, William.
Sorry. So when Martel mentioned, you know, if the board has set really good goals, it makes this whole process much easier. Like one of the things that we've really encountered, and everybody here on this call, like you're pretty much familiar with this, charter, we have these evergreen charters, and most of your charter agreements have goals already built into them that we have to hold you accountable for, right? And in some cases, these have been really like well thought out goals. They're regularly reviewed. And so I think this might kind of be this could go to what Martel is saying of just like, if you identify these really good goals, everything else kind of falls into place. There are some charter schools where they have goals that say things like, we're going to perform better than 90% of the students in the state. And that's just not realistic for like where they are or what they're doing or like what their grade levels are, or tests that say, or goals that say, we're going to perform better than, we're going to get an A on the state accountability. Well, the state got rid of state accountability years ago. So there's just some of this stuff where, as you're looking at how do we measure our director's performance, these goals are really good indicators that you can use and rely on. And myself, Liz, Andrew, your portfolio manager team, we can help, and Marie, we can all help as you're thinking about writing new goals. what do we want these goals to be so that they are meaningful, they are helpful, we do have a direction of where we're going to go, and it's not just some, you know, glorious statement of that can't be measured and doesn't make any sense.
Thank you, William. That I will call that an assist. One, because I love that you talked about the regular review, which is my next slide, right? The fact that these are things that we are always looking at so that we notice trends and we notice changes, and the emphasis on goal setting, because we actually do have a session later in this series where we're really going to specifically focus the entire session on goal setting. And we talk about management and governance, the perfect partnership, right? And once you decide where you're going and hold each other accountable. So awesome. Let me take a quick look in the chat. Our school developed a data dashboard that shows progress on specific agreed upon metrics. It's helped to provide context. Awesome, Nathan, because you know what? I would say we, in our work, we encounter a couple different things. One, we encounter some groups that are really, really struggling, don't have a dashboard, don't really know what they should be looking at. Two, we encounter some boards, they do have a dashboard, but they feel like it's not the right information and that it's not helping them. So it really behooves the group to really get together and think about and ask great questions and distill down to what is the data. I'm going to repeat myself, that what is the data that helps us to understand the overall health of the school. I also like what William said about just trying to hit a state, like a state accountability measure. We think it's really important. If you're supposed to meet a certain target, that's really important. But we also think about when you holistically look at your school and your students, you know that you want more than that for them, right? So like state accountability is a low bar. You want to be realistic about what you can achieve, but also just set your sights higher, right? What do we want for these students and these families that are under our care? And so here we are looking at this, thinking about, okay, exactly as to help us understand and point us to some of the data, thinking about what are the things that we're accountable for, right? What's in our charter? What did we promise? What does the state say we have to do? What is of interest to our authorizer? What might they want to see? What data will be used to rank our school? All of these are important in sort of pointing you to the types of data that can be helpful as you put together a dashboard, whether you're starting from scratch or whether you're refining one that you already have. I should also say this, and I think Debbie mentioned this before, schools may or may not have specific people devoted to collecting this data, right? And also we want to be mindful of school leaders, because some of the things that we've heard before are, my board keeps asking for this, that, and I don't have time to pull it all together. So sort of getting to a happy medium. Is your school one where you do have a director of data, where you do have a staff person who that is their responsibility for pulling that dashboard and putting all the data together? Or is this something you need to outsource? Do we need to bring in another company, right? Because we want to get everything that we need to get, but we don't want it to be overwhelming and unrealistic for the school leader. Here are some of the things that in working with folks, boards across the country, folks have suggested that they look at as they're beginning to think about data, what goes in their dashboard, things that are helpful. You'll notice, like Debbie said earlier, breaking down into some groups, not only just looking at the whole school, but hey, we have ELL students. Are they doing as well as the entire school? Does there need to be a better focus there? Same thing if we have students that are receiving special education services. Also, the assessment data. Is everybody on the board familiar with the types of tests that the students are taking and what those tests are measuring, basically high level, and how different groups of students are doing? You know, we mentioned again, things like attendance and discipline. And I think Debbie also alluded to special programs like gifted and talented and AP, and making sure that those are available across the school, right? And that are not just certain populations that are doing well, because we have had instances in our work for sure of schools that meet all the targets, are celebrated by the state, they're top this and top that, and a large majority of the students are doing really well. That's great, but I think you should probably measure yourself in terms of how the most at-risk students are doing, right? The students who charters were created for, right? Charters said they wanted to do something different for students that weren't being served in regular public schools. And so take a look at that population and ask yourself, what are we doing for those students? So what are some of the things board members should be asking themselves when it comes to data? Some of these we have alluded to. Are there certain grades or subjects that need more attention? Certain subgroups that need more attention? What does the state consider a proficient? What the state considers proficient a sufficient measure of success? Remember what I was saying is that is okay, the state provides this, but do you know that you want even more for your students? Don't let that be the bar where you stay. What growth in students' performance should we expect? It's important for board members to really understand and dialogue with their school leader about what it means for students to grow in performance. And one of the ways that you are tracking and seeing how there is improvement, gauging the stability of our teacher population. That case study hit on that as well. You know, oftentimes we are not getting feedback or listening to teachers or understanding. I always tell this story, and I know I got to hurry up because I've taken up a little bit of time, but you took up some of my time, Debbie. But I always tell this story. We did a training. It was a governance. It was like our governance academy that we do twice a year in DC and we do across the country. And in this particular governance academy, we're in Buffalo, New York, and we had something like 50 people in this is pre-pandemic. So in a big, conference hall, and we're doing this governance academy, and we were doing a session on stakeholders and the relationship that you should have with your stakeholders. And although these were all board members, there were a small set of teachers there because there was one school that has a teacher focus group that works with their board. And their board really wants to keep communication open. So of course, when we broke into groups and they had to write the relationship with that stakeholder, the teachers came up with this sort of wonderful list that really spoke to the type of relationship that they want to have with their board and their school leaders. So that is my plug, to just have that open communication with stakeholders and understand what's going on, because you have your teachers who are with your students every single day. And so you want to make sure that they are giving their best, and you have your school leader who is responsible to make sure that teachers are giving their best. So you really need to understand culture. And then the student population, we talked about that already. Are kids leaving, and what is that telling you, and what do you need to do? And then here is just a list of questions for board members to continue to think about as you look at data. Now, we have promised you a 10-minute break, and we will give it to you. So it is 22 after. So we're going to come back at 32 after. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about oversight. We're going to talk specifically about the school performance committee. We're of course going to ask you to do our survey. So everybody come back at 32 after, and we'll continue.
I just hit record, and I just wanted to answer something from chat. So, and Marie, thank you for stepping in there. For those of you who aren't regular participants and are just here today, but would like this information that we are sharing, Marie will send you the presentation and the resources so that you have them and you can use them as well.
Okay, I'm going to jump into steps to exercising Oversight, and Debbie, I'll try to give you your time back, but we try to just sort of lay out 4 steps for you to think about in exercising academic oversight, right? And starting with the where are we now? Where do we have to go? What to do when we're on or off track? And what to do when we meet our goals. So the where are we now, of course, is super important. And for some of you right now, you may have a very clear idea of where your school stands. And for some of you, maybe not as much. So really going back to what we've been talking about, the data, what are our strengths? What assessments are we using? What interventions are in place? What are the key terms that the entire board needs to know? I always tell the story of a board member who, in a different city, the framework is called the PMF. And almost at every meeting, she would say, like, what is the PMF again? And like the school leader would get so frustrated, but we have to remind people that board members are in a different world all day. And then they come to a board meeting and they're hit with all of this academic data. So what is a board? What can you do to help board members? Like, even if it's a glossary of terms, like what can you do to make this easy for the folks that are trying to wrestle this so that every board meeting doesn't feel like a new thing for them to learn? And also just understanding the how different subgroups are performing and how your performance is similar to other schools. And aligning to what I said before, also what training and support does the board need? Now, where do we have to go? We just talked a whole section about this, right? Like, what have we said in this charter? What is the bar for success, right? If we're going to have some type of review, what are they looking at? And also, I like this, right? If we look at where we are now and where we need to go, what is the gap, right? What is in between? What is the testing calendar? How is that data interpreted? I think that we have heard a lot of these ideas, and they are all geared towards helping us understand where we had to go. And I think that's overarching what William was saying about goal setting, right? We have to lay out that roadmap so that we know where we're all trying to go and we can go there together. How will we know whether we're on or off track? And this again is us reiterating, what is the data that will help us understand the overall health of the school? And how can we use a dashboard? Do we have one? Is it good? Do we need a better one? And do I feel like as a board member that I'm getting the data that helps me understand? How are we engaging with our academic performance committee? Are they helpful to the rest of the board? Are they raising issues for us, right? Maybe there's something you didn't see, but maybe in collaboration with the school leader, the school performance committee brings to the board meeting something that needs to be raised and discussed across the board. Does the committee have its own goals to track? Who are the staff members? Like when we talk about an academic committee, and Debbie is going to talk about who should be on that committee, but are there particular folks from the school staff that are going to be working with board members? And also this last one, if it's allowed, non-board members, they're not voting board members, but can you add people to that committee? Let's say your board is light on people with academic experience. Are there people that can be helpful, that can volunteer, that don't necessarily want to be on the board, but can be helpful to that committee? And then what do we do when we meet our goals, right? I heard someone, when we're talking about the case study, say, if those first 3 years were great, what did we do, right? Learn from your success. What were the things that worked? What were the curriculum strategies that worked? What were the interventions? Can we replicate this, right? Let's celebrate our success. And for the communications people, let's communicate our success. Let's everybody know that we're the hottest game in town and they need to go to our school. And then again, questions. Like I said, one of probably the most important role of a board member is to ask the right questions. So in this section, we like to continually give you examples of questions, of things you should be asking, things you should be thinking about. Definitely thinking about trends and how you compare to other schools, addressing areas where you may be off track. Now I am going to, as promised, let Debbie talk about the School Performance Committee.
Thanks, Shireen. And I think one of the things that what we really want to convey today in all of this work around academic data is data. And please, just like you would question financial data, if that came up at a board meeting or if you were concerned about something, the same should occur with academic data. So inform yourself enough, get trained enough to know what to ask, know what data you're looking at, what it informs you about the health of your school, and ask questions, poke holes, make sure that you understand how that is affecting the impact and the overall health of your school. Okay. So what is an academic committee, a school performance committee? And I really do like what Shireen said. The school performance sounds, if you term it that, sounds nicer because it really does go outside of just academics. Your committee is a key asset. Think about it that way. And so this is where, if you have board members with academic expertise, this is where they belong in their committee work. And they're going to work alongside key school staff to produce the data that they're going to be looking at, that they're going to share that data and have conversations around that aligned to your goals. They're going to make sure that the dashboard or the way that you as a full board monitor the progress is really clear and concise and looking at the same data over time. They're going to, if there are strategic issues that they want the board to ring in on, they're going to really surface those during the committee meetings and bring that to the full board. So what's the nuts and bolts? So maybe you have your school leader or your principal or your chief academic officer, someone from the school staff that is going to serve on this committee that has actually really seeped themselves in the data, understands all the academic and non-academic things that are happening at the school and are going to be able to contribute that data to this committee. And then 2 to 3 board members. What I said before was this is where your academic experts really are going to sit. If you don't have any academic experts on your board, I encourage you to think about how can we use that as some of our strategic recruitment for the next time that we need to bring in board members. And I would encourage you to really move that up on the list. But as Shireen said, you may actually have some folks that are very skilled in this work, but don't have time to sit on the board or don't want to sit on the board. And so they may be interested in serving on a committee. You will have a chair. The chair will need to be a member of the board. And that chair is going to make sure that these meetings are organized, that they're scheduled, that they are aligned to the goals, that things that happen in the meetings are recorded and that information gets back to the full board. So committees will meet between board meetings. And again, holding the school leader accountable for results, providing advice, recommendations, suggestions, connections, asking a lot of questions. But know that this committee does not make the decisions for everyone, and that they bring these decisions that need to be made to the full board. Next, we're going to think about how do you actually scope and sequence this, right? So you need to elect a chair from the board, look at your bylaws to see how that gets done. If to make sure that you do that, but that is going to be a board member who is the chair of your academic committee. Make sure that you have committee tasks or goals or a charter. I've heard lots of different words describing this, but that's your purview. What is this school performance committee actually going to focus on, and staying in that lane? And then making sure that the goals that you have approved with your school leader, those academic metrics and some non-academic metrics are really what the committee is going to spend their time looking at as well. Identify the partners from staff through your school leader, and make sure that you have just the people that can give you as a committee this data. You definitely want to think about a dashboard, and dashboards can be as simple as making sure that you set the goals on one side and that the data is reflected on the same data over time that is reflective of those goals. It could be a lot more complicated than that. If you, as Shireen said, if you have a data person at the school, then that would be, and they have a dashboard, they can probably hide fields that the board doesn't need to be focused on to share with the board, so that you can see what the school is looking at on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that can really inform your decisions as a board. Making sure that you're really thinking about the trends, like some of the questions that Shireen shared a few minutes ago, like how are we doing as compared to last year? How are we doing as compared to the first quarter? What has changed? Do we have any idea what may be causing some of these trends? How do we do benchmarked against other high-performing schools that we want to see ourselves benchmarked against, right? So really understanding where you as a school and your students fall in, so that you can set strong academic goals, realistic academic goals, achievable academic goals that will help your students achieve at high levels. And this committee should assure that they are elevating any issues that are discussed in the committee with the full board, and make some recommendations to the full board so that the full board can vote on them or have a conversation or provide some resources around.
Maybe I could imagine in that earlier scenario that the academic committee might raise, hello, we've had a number of teachers quitting, and the school leader is going to present some data around that, and we're going to have a discussion, right? That's something that they could have been doing.
Absolutely. So then here's some committee prompts. Again, we like to share questions with you because we feel like good boards ask questions and do something with the answers. So here's some prompts that you might think of in your committee. What does the data tell you is happening at the school? What conclusions can you draw? What questions should we bring to the full board? What recommendations should we bring to the full board? Are we missing some data? Is there anything else that we'd like to see or need to see in order to know how our students are doing against the goals, or maybe even in other aspects that we really need to make sure we're doubling down on and focusing on right now? And then what are our next steps as a committee? So again, having these meetings at the committee level is great because it's your divide and conquer strategy. Your expertise really gets engaged and involved in these discussions. But then what? How does what you're talking about get to the full board? What do you need the full board to do? How do you share that information with the full board? And how do you express to the board what you need them to do? So it may be, this is just some information our committee wants you to know that we've been discussing. It could be, here is some recommendations that we've discussed that we'd like to share with you. And we want you to be looking and holding us accountable to make sure that these recommendations are actually making change. Or it could be, rest of the board, we as a committee have really recognized that the school leader and their team is telling us that we need some clear interventions to move this data along and really move the needle in how our students are performing. We've listened to their recommendation. We truly believe that this is the right intervention. We need you to vote on spending money for this intervention. And here's all the information you need. So making sure that the committee not only looks at data, not only discusses the data, but brings that information back to the full board so the full board can act. So oftentimes we have seen different reports to the board, and what we would love for you to think about as we've discussed all of this data, as we've discussed kind of the role of the board, as we've discussed the role of the committee, as we discussed just looking at your oversight role, what do you think should go in a school performance committee report that gets shared with you? What would you like to see? We'd love for you to go ahead and put that in the chat. Think about all the things that you'd like to see in your school committee report in order to help you be an informed, engaged, and a data-driven decision maker. So go ahead and put some things in the chat that you would like to see that you'll like from the school performance committee. And I'll go ahead and read some of these as they come in. School climate survey results and the analysis. The priorities. Better data from state level that we can use to drill down on. Behavior and attendance reports. Maybe grade level data. Report on school improvement planned goals, work plan goals and results. Great, keep them coming. Trending data of academic growth and gaps, academic data comparing to neighboring schools, analysis of the raw data, how gaps are going to be mitigated, a fair look at climate, social emotional learning, behavior, longitudinal data on post-secondary success. So this is great. I love all of these things. And, you know, some of these things may be things that you really want to focus on because you have disaggregated the data and you recognize that there are certain areas that you want to be paying special attention to and seeing how the differences are. So if you're looking at maybe grade level data, you know, it's important to think about, I know it's not all about testing, and standardized testing is not the end all be all of schools, but it does give you an understanding of where students are and are they on track for where you think they should be or where you want them to be. So sometimes looking at that standardized data from specific grade levels, those that take the assessments, is important. So you may need to look at that and then be looking at what that information tells you. Another is information if curriculum at school is sufficient to meet goals. So again, the curriculum really is like, it's connected to how your students learn, what they're learning, and if they are able to absorb the information, to respond back with that information, to really achieve at high levels. So it's part of what you are doing, but the curriculum has been chosen, the curriculum has been implemented. Maybe one of the things that you would want to see if you continue, again, this is like a root cause. This is what we were talking about from that case study and in other ways. Like if you are continually off track with your goals, if you are continually not performing at the level that you want to be performing at, starting to look at root causes, curriculum may be one of those. And then it would be a time to maybe bring in like an academic audit. So there are firms, there are companies that do this, that help your school understand, like, is it time on task that's, you know, off track? Is it the just implementation of the curriculum, or is it the curriculum? So if you're continuing to have, you know, you're not meeting these goals time and time again, and the recommendations are not happening, you may want to do an academic audit. Other things that you think should be on the academic committee or your school performance committee report?
Debbie, the one thing I was going to add, which someone alluded to earlier, they talked about a calendar. And so the committee would also be thinking about whether you're meeting every month or whether you're meeting every other month. They should be thinking about which items we'll be looking at, because certainly there are some data that is not changing every month, but really understanding what we're looking at different times of the year. And I think also to the point about curriculum, that is the whole point of looking at the data. And if we are not hitting the targets, that's a conversation with the school leader around what are the things that we're doing to sort of mitigate the challenges that we're having now, and sort of looking at all the possible impacts. And like what Debbie said, is it curriculum, or is it time on task, or, you know, is it something else? Is it that we're having huge social emotional learning issues or behavior problems? But really your school leader is spending time and doing observations and looking at their own data. They should be able to have a good explanation of why we're not meeting some of the targets and what they plan to do about it. Somebody said, keeping up with the policies the state requires is a major job, especially if you're not meeting every month. The compliance pieces takes up a lot of the board meetings. Yeah, I think that we definitely want to have a compliance calendar. But again, we talk about this all the time, right, Debbie? About compliance is the low bar.
Design, I see that.
Check every single bar. They can check off everything in terms of compliance. They've handed in everything, they've met every deadline, but they still don't have a very good school. So compliance has to be managed. And you want to keep your eye on that, and you want to figure out systems and structures to do that, but it's definitely the low bar.
I think the other thing that, you know, we really want to share is, as you think about who attends your school. So, you know, what are and everybody should have a high expectation for the students at your school. But if your students are coming in 3, 4, 5 grade levels behind, this happens, like, what is the growth you want to see? If you are a school that really serves an at-risk population, if you are a school that is here because students haven't been succeeding in other schools, and you are comparing yourself to the top school in the state, that you're a little off in your understanding. Like, you want to get your students who have had all these challenges to a high level, but you need to be realistic about that. So really having those conversations, who's attending our school? What do we see with the data? Are we seeing growth? Are we seeing enough growth? What should the growth look like for the students that maybe have had struggles in their other schools and are here with us now? You can also really look at trend data around how about the students that have been with us since the school starting, have been in every grade that we have. Are they performing differently than the students that came in, let's say, last year? And so what does that tell us? What are the recommendations around there? That's how you can really look to disaggregate the data to understand. And if you're only looking at the big picture, as Shireen said, we've seen schools that have been like touted as these great schools schools. But when you really start to peel back some of these layers, you'll see that there's students that are really not performing well. And it's a subgroup that is not being served well. So really understanding how all students experience your school is important. And what are the expectations? What are the goals set for all students, though you might have to look a little deeper into the data to see how everyone is performing.
Debbie, there's a question in the chat about how the board knows if a goal is reasonable, too low, too high. Should academic goals come from the school leader or the school leader in concert with the school performance committee? Do we use school-wide academic goals as the agreed upon goals in the director's evaluation?
Lots of great questions in here. Thank you. So yes, how do you know if your goal is reasonable? I think pressure testing it, like understanding what are the benchmarks that you, like if this goal is saying that, you know, you are going to have 99% proficiency across the whole school. And you look at last year, you had 54% proficiency across the whole school. Does that seem like a realistic goal? No, probably not. So really understanding, like, and asking questions of your school leader, what is a high growth measurement for students? What is an average growth measurement for students across a year? What is a low growth measurement for students? So you have some context there. Again, if you are concerned that this is a reasonable goal, we heard from William before that, you know, your authorizer would be happy to talk through that with you. They've seen every school's goals. They know what is as high, a high goal, a good goal, an achievable goal, a reasonable goal. So you can talk to them about it. Look at some of the other schools that maybe have a similar demographic or similar neighborhood to yours and see if they're aligned at all. So that's how you can understand if a goal is reasonable. But first, having that conversation with your school leader and understanding the context of how that fills in there. Academic goals, I have seen it done in a couple of different ways. So how your school does it really depends. I've seen the school leader and their team come with their academic goals to the school performance committee and then discuss, are these goals rigorous? Are they reasonable? Are they achievable? All of those things. Sometimes it's they put it all on the table. These are the things, and the school performance committee and the staff from the school level actually talk about it and kind of knock those out. So depending on who's on your school performance committee and how you've done things in the past, that's both ways are done fine. And the school-wide academic goals certainly should be on your school leader's evaluation. You know, when you think about your school leader evaluation, and we will have a session on this, we're going to really think about what is in their job description. So what are the pieces of their job description that fit that you're evaluating against? And oversight of academics is a huge, huge, huge one for your school leader. So thinking about that as part of their evaluation is very important. And so making sure that goals are set, that you put those and have those conversations with your school leader at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the school year, so that everyone is clear on the expectations across the year and there are no surprises. There's no surprises to your school leader. There's no surprises to you as a board.
Thank you for that, Debbie. I don't know if folks have other questions. We've talked about a lot, so we want to spend some time reflecting. You'll notice that we are a group that always wants you to think about what you have learned and what you have heard and how you might put that into action. And so we're going to be in groups again, and we have well, let me not get ahead of myself first. And I don't know if this applies to everybody in this group, but for those that were in the session last time and that are regularly attending the sessions, remember that we were asking you to upload your bios and your headshots. You'll get the same email that you get each time. And it will also direct you to the live binder that we mentioned earlier. That binder will have the deck from last week. The binder will have the deck from this week, and the binder will have anything that we want to share with you. I think we shared a couple of questions from a couple of articles from EdOp's blog about academic oversight. And each of our sessions, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to share tools that support what we've been talking about. And also there's our contact information. Someone on the break asked about our social media, and the last page of our deck has all of that.
Shireen, one thing, sorry, not to interrupt, but I just wanted to share one of the reasons why we do these bios and headshots is because we understand that you as board members may feel a little isolated, like you are very myopic, focused on your school, your board. And sometimes doing sessions like this, where we have a cohort, where we have other schools and other boards that may have done things that you're going to attempt and can help you not hit the same pitfalls that they did, or that have a different way that looking back, they'd reflect and do it differently. So we really want you to use this group. This is not a competition. School education is not a competition. We want all kids to achieve at high levels. And how can we help each other do that? So this bio and headshot is really to help you reach out to each other, to understand, maybe this school has a great tool, and maybe there's a question that I can ask about this from this other board leader that I've seen on this Zoom. So that's why we really want and encourage you to engage not only with us and the material, but with each other. You have a lot of knowledge around this Zoom, and we really want you to use it.
Thank you, Debbie. So again, we're going to put you in your groups because we want to close out with just some thinking and some reflections. Of course, we're going to come back together, but think in your groups. We want you to share one aha moment, one thing you will implement, and one thing you still want to learn about. We're continually adding to our sessions and always want to make sure that we're addressing the things that you want to know. And Debbie has put them in the chat. So she'll put you in your groups. You'll have about 10 minutes. Keep our committee agreements in mind. We want everybody to engage. You may say something like to Debbie's point about learning from each other. You may say something that really sparks something in another person. Another group may have something that your board can really use. So we definitely do not take our reflection time or our group time lightly. So you're going to go into your groups for about 10 minutes to talk about those 3 reflections. Take it away, Debbie.
Well, I'll share something then.
Thank you.
I like the idea of the academic committee that you brought up, where it seems like, and this is not a problem that we have, because a couple people on the board are educators outside of the school and have a strong education background, which is really helpful. But I can see how there might be circumstances where, to keep a board meeting focused, if you have that academic committee, doing all this, looking all the different things, and then come into the board meeting and saying, here's our 10-minute summary of our 4-hour discussion and everything that we looked at, so that, and we're all aligned here on what we think we should do. And that way the board members, we can just say, you guys have talked about it, we trust you guys. Yeah, that looks good. It makes sense to me. Let's go for it.
Thank you. Awesome. And
I'd like to also add, Martel, thank you for that, but also feel free to ask questions. If you don't think it's, if you don't know, if you don't think, or ask, how did you come to this? Get, don't just rely on them, but definitely do use the context that they have.
There's a happy medium somewhere between getting into the weeds and just having blind faith, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, you summed up the entire workshop, right? Like, you need to look, it's not your job to run the school, but you need to make sure that you're paying enough attention. I'm gonna trade seats with you. I see Amy, board should be asking more questions. Love it. About the goals we set. And I want to make a board dashboard. I'd love more info. We have more info about board dashboards. We even have a couple of different companies that build them. Whatever you want, we can connect you with. I second the dashboard thing, would love more info on how to create and maintain one. And I think we probably have some tools that we can include in the
live binder. Yeah, we have a good tool on building a dashboard. We don't build a dashboard for you. And part of that is because the way that your school collects data and systems that you use, but we'll tell you kind of what are the high points to put in there, how often you should look at, and the questions you should ask.
So another thing, and actually, I guess we were in this. One thing you were implement, I heard a lot already of dashboards. And well, I heard dashboards and I heard school performance committee. Other things that you would implement. I mean, those are two good ones. If we
Can I just say something? Sorry. So one thing that I just want to share out, and wherever this falls, but I think it's important that the board also understands that my full-time job is not for them. It's not to prepare meetings or to present to them. My full-time job is to run the school and to help my staff and my teachers and my students and my families and be there for them, and that I can prepare everything I need to for the board and be ready to go so that the board meetings are fruitful and they're constructive and they're building on the culture that we want in our school and we're moving forward. But it's important to remember that I have a full-time job. It is just a sliver of my time to talk to the board. The rest of my time is for my staff and my students and my families and everything else. So I always invite my board. I'm like, if you're not comfortable or if there's something that you're concerned about, come into the school, come spend more time with me. Come walk through the hallways, come visit with the teachers, come talk to the parents, come to our activity. We have a trunk or treat in 2 weeks, come. We just had Apple Crunch Day, come. Be involved. It's not just a board, I guess, for my thing, and I appreciate my board because I'm constantly inviting them to come out so that it's not just I see you in a meeting and I don't see you again. You want to be a part of this, then you need to be a part of this. If you just want the title of being a board member, you know what, find something else to do, because I need you to be here as a team. And that's something that I think I'm really lucky. I have a board that is very much a team oriented. And so they will always start off, our conversations with, Katina, what can we do? How's it going? All right, let's start our meeting. And we begin and we talk and I invite them and they come. But I think that sometimes, I don't know.
Katina, that was so many things that you said were so important. And I definitely want to just touch on a couple of them. One is the board needs to manage itself because you have too many darn things on your plate as a school leader to also manage the board. So that is super important. Thank you for sharing that. The second is that's kind of why you have committees, so that you don't have to produce everything. The committees are going to work to get that information that they need to share with the full board. So that is another really important reason to have committees. And the third, when you said that you were inviting board members in, for boards, we talked about data-driven decision-making? Well, you also need to understand your context, understand the community that your school serves. Get in the school, like talk to your school leader about opportunities to see what's happening at your school, to meet some community members, to be a part of it, so that when it is time to make those tough decisions, you have the context and the data along with that. So I really appreciate everything that you just said, Katina, and I'm so happy to hear that you have a great board.
And I want to point out two things that I think Katina raised that can also be a danger, right? One is that we don't want the academic committee to slide into trying to do the school leader's job, or to slide into, like you were saying, and giving you a bunch of other things to do. That committee should be collaborative, right? That I think that is one of the places where it's easiest for folks to sort of step into management and not stay in their lane. So we want to be mindful. And I think a lot of the stuff Debbie talked about in setting up your committee and determining sort of what our role, what that description is, being very clear about it. And then also, like we mentioned, the things that you want, the data that you want to see, really thinking about it, and not presenting your school leader with just an endless list of things and things and things, but it's a collaboration that we're trying to get together and understanding what are the key things that help us understand the health of the school, and not just asking for data for data's sake. So we appreciate that voice. And I think that's why it's always important when we bring board members together. A lot of times it's a school leader, it's a teacher, it's someone who can give them that sort of reality check of what this really looks like when you're implementing it. So thank you for that. And I think, oh, and one thing you still want to learn more about. So I was seeing a lot of chatter in here about dashboards and writing goals. And Amy says she wants to share the list of questions with her board. Definitely, board members always love those questions. So yeah, and we definitely will try to put some dashboards in the folder. And Marie, I saw a comment, oh yeah, should we do a school dashboard show and tell training? That would be super.
My wheels are already turning on a dashboard show and tell, so
awesome. Well, we appreciate all of you, and we always want to get your feedback. It helps us to make these trainings better. We're able to present to you because we presented to folks before and they've shared what worked and what didn't work. And so we depend on you to do the same thing so that these trainings will only get better and better. Debbie is putting the link in the chat. If you would just take a few minutes to let us know about today's training, about who you are, that would be greatly appreciated before you step away to continue the rest of your evening. We are just so excited to be able to present this work, to bring this work to you. We're excited for the conversations that you're having with each other. You know, we will be ecstatic to finish with Utah and have stories of new school performance committees and new dashboards, and we're clear about how we hold our school leader accountable, all those things. So I wish I had them in front of me, but our future topics have to do, I think the next one might even be school leader evaluation and support. We're also going to talk about setting goals. And maybe there's one that I am not.
I'm looking it up right now, Shireen. Thanks.
Yeah, so we started out with a general overview of sort of governance and our standards. And of course, today we had academic oversight. And like I said, number 3 is school leader evaluation and support. Setting goals might be number 5. So, oh, stakeholder engagement. Is there one of stakeholder engagement?
Yes. So
really,
next session is school leader relationship. And so that's where we're going to talk about school leader evaluation. Then yes, session 4 is stakeholder engagement, and session 5 is goal setting beyond compliance.
So we have these riveting sessions for you. We try to keep them engaging, and we try to make them really to be things that you can just pick up and take with you back to your boards, and really just move towards great governance. So again, we thank you so much, and we will have all of these materials for you. Debbie, did you want to say anything? And I will also, I know someone at this last slide has where we are on the World Wide Web, right? You have our website, our Facebook, our Twitter, and our LinkedIn.
So yes, thank you. Thank you to all of you that participated today. New faces, new names around our Zoom. Hope you got some great tidbits and nuggets out of this. For those of you that continue to come back, thank you, thank you, thank you. We will continue to share with you and learn from you, and take a couple minutes to do this survey before you head out. That way we can get feedback and really tailor this to be as useful to you as you need. And everyone have a wonderful evening, afternoon, and we'll see you in a month.